used to be write a screenplay. But today, with technology, with the digital cameras that you have, even the ones shooting this interview, it's so inexpensive to make even a small little short film that, forget the screenplay, which is super complicated. Make the short movie.
Welcome to my office, Harvey.
Nice to be in your office. I'm going to negotiate a bigger office for you by tomorrow.
Please do.
Tomorrow it'll be the size of Michael Strahan's office, at least.
That is perfect.
God.
You grew up not far from here in Queens.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You and your brother and you and your friend during college got into promoting music. That's how this all started.
Yep.
What do you think about your childhood shaped you and made you want to get into the movie business?
Well, I always wanted to be in the whole college music thing was just an excuse because I'd always studied film. I studied film at the University of Buffalo. And the only way we could make money was by doing the music thing, and our university ran out of funds, so we did it privately. We raised money from the, people, but I never liked the music industry. I mean, not the music industry as a whole, but I never liked promoting concerts or any of that stuff.
Really? Why not?
I got tired of sorting out the green M&Ms, backstage, for whatever bands they were, these big rock and roll bands with things. But I always talked about movies. I always talked about film from the beginning. How
do musicians versus TV and movie stars compare?
I think that, you can have more fun with the musicians. I think, to be in the film industry, takes a certain amount of intellectualism. Whatever. And I think some rock and roll guys are like the Rolling Stones or Paul McCartney and Bruce Springsteen, and having met them, incredibly brilliant. And then there are others who can play three chords, in the same song over and over again.
What were some of the early things you learned and maybe learned the hard way?
You learn what audiences like. You learn how.
What do audiences like?
I think audiences like emotional transcendence. I think they like to be involved in a character and follow a journey. At least in the kind of serious movies that I make.
Your parents clearly played a huge role in your childhood, in your life. You named your studio after your parents, Miriam and Max.
Right.
What did they teach you about the movie business, about the business of life?
Well, my mother loved movies. She loved the intellectual kind of movies. And she couldn't stand, for the most part, the silly popcorn movies. I guess the intellectualism, and the love of that kind of cinema, foreign language cinema, that came from her. She had a very, inquiring mind, and my dad, like World War II movies with Errol Flynn, so we got all tastes.
What are some of the biggest mistakes you think early on in your career you made that it's natural that any young filmmaker, producer is going to make early on in a career?
I think I made a lot, and I can't remember individuals, but there were plenty. And, suffice to say that you learn the hard way, in our industry, and it's good in a way because you don't repeat it, and that's what I try to, teach the ones who come after me, the same thing. But, teaching is not easy. Experiencing it, they'll never forget it.
If you were starting today versus when you got started, it's a more difficult environment now, but there are more opportunities.
It used to be write a screenplay. But today, with technology, with the digital cameras that you have, even the ones shooting this interview, it's so inexpensive to make even a small little short film that, forget the screenplay, which is super complicated. Make the short movie.
It's not expensive like
it never
used
to be. I remember my first movies, we had those 35mm cameras. You needed 4 guys to lift it. I mean, seriously. Now you can shoot it, the same movie, with, digital cameras, and you can keep the film rolling all day long, and you're not blowing film. For any filmmaker today, make a short film. You write it, you direct it, you produce it very often, you cast it, whatever, and somebody like me sees that.
You've partnered with Lexus to put together a showcase of the best of the best. Tell me about the finalists. Messiah, Game, The Nation Holds Its Breath, and Friday Night.
Yep.
All very different films.
Yep.
What's the factor that unites all of them, other than they're just good?
I think the fact that unites them is the international point of view. Even though they're universal themes, they're done, for their country, and I love that. You get a potpourri. For example, the Irish short is about a guy who's having his first child. He's in the hospital, and the game is on. The team that he followed his whole life, and we were all Chicago Cubs fans for a minute, last week. And
that was a great minute.
It's amazing, whatever. And I'm a lifelong opposite Chicago Cubs fan. I'm a Mets fan for the National League and the Yankees, the American. So I've never liked the Cubs, but this year, we were all Cubs fans. And so imagine the Cubs are on, as an American audience, and you're having your first kid, and you're lifelong, and like the unbelievable moment after 108 years is happening, and all of a sudden it's those last 2 innings, and the rain tarp has come down, and you're having a baby at that exact moment. Do you watch the game? Do you trust the nurse? And he makes,
he brings all these stories together.
Brings all the stories together.
On the day of the most important soccer match in Irish history, there is only one thing that could keep this young couple from watching the match.
You're having a baby.
We're having a baby.
And then, you watch the Parisian one, and it's a thriller. Mm-hmm. And, it's a point of view of clearly resembles the Paris attack.
I found her. She's at the club.
What club?
The club. The
What club?
The one with the hostages, Claire.
And then the American one is, a female empowerment.
Coach, come here for the tryouts.
What's your name?
AJ Green.
Gentlemen, the next few days are about more than just basketball.
And the Australian one actually stars a guy who was probably Australia's most famous Aboriginal actor.
There's a lot of tension between creative and business. There's the two sides, and I feel like you figured out the two sides early on. Maybe it was your father's background. He understood business and the diamond industry, and he understood the hustle side of getting something accomplished. How do you marry those two ideas?
It actually wasn't my dad. My dad was great. My dad was a idealist, and but the idea of building the library, we did some work for Paul McCartney when we were kids. And I used to work for Apple Records when I was 16 years old, running and doing errands and stuff like that. But we did some work for Paul McCartney, and I'll never forget his brother-in-law and his father-in-law talking to me one day about what a publishing company is and how you own rights to publishing. And I just said, that same thing could apply to us as we grew and successful. We just said we can buy libraries, we can buy films, we can put them in a library and curate the library. So that came from Paul McCartney.
That was probably some of the best advice you've ever received in your entire life.
100%. It wasn't even advice. They were just talking about it.
And you listened.
I took it as advice. Yeah.
That's a very important piece of advice to other
Right.
people, though. Listen
Right.
to what you're hearing. You probably got some...
Especially my kids. They should watch this interview and listen.
Listen, what do
They're
you
never
want
gonna-
your...
they're never
What's
gonna
the
do
most
it.
important lesson for your kids?
Listen to their dad.
Listen to their dad.
Not so much their mom.
A lot of people give a lot of bad advice.
Yeah.
What is the worst advice you've ever received?
Throughout the course of my career and the early beginnings of it, people would always say to abandon your dream. Not to do it. It's not going to happen. It's impossible. You heard that quite a bit. You just have to you have to believe in yourself. You have to be somewhat tenacious, and you really have to have a conviction. And a love that you're going to do this or not. It's such a rejection business for actors. So hard, to do that. I have such sympathy for them. People say, oh my God, they have such a good life. You should see the thousands of others that have very poor life, and yet they're still following their dream. And without them, we wouldn't be able to populate our films or populate our theater regionally and, internationally. So an actor's life is not easy.
With the rejection side of it,
Yeah.
what's your advice to people dealing with that part of it? Getting a no from Harvey Weinstein.
Don't take it seriously, because I have to say no sometimes because the hair is wrong or this is wrong, or sometimes it's physical, or sometimes it's ethnicity. It's all sorts of things. But the greatest thing is when you change I love, the idea of so many actors tell me, they say, I don't want to play the wife, give me the husband part and flip it. They flip the genre on its head.